My family disowned me, so I became more successful than all of them. I still remember the night my family cut me off like a diseased branch from their perfect tree. It was my father's birthday, and as usual, the house was packed with relatives. My uncles bragging about their businesses, my aunts whispering about whose kid had disappointed them this time. I was the black sheep, the one who never fit into their mold. I had dared to dream differently. While my siblings followed the family tradition of medicine and law, I had chosen technology, specifically artificial intelligence. I saw the future in algorithms, in neural networks that could revolutionize the world. But to them, I was a disgrace. A fool who had turned his back on a guaranteed career for a fantasy. The argument that changed everything started over dinner. "You're wasting your life," my mother said, shaking her head in disappointment. "I'm building something that will change the world," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "You're building nothing," my father snapped. "You threw away your future for some hobby." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Hobby? Do you even know what I do?" "AI is the future. In 5 years, your real jobs will depend on the technology I create." That was the final straw. My father stood up, his face red with fury. "Enough. If you walk out that door, you are no longer my son." I looked at my mother, my siblings. None of them spoke up. Not one word. So I walked. No savings, no backup plan. Just my laptop and the fire inside me. I slept in my car that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had just made the worst mistake of my life. But deep down, I knew. I was free, and I was about to prove them all wrong. The first few months were brutal. I crashed on a friend's couch for a while, coding late into the night and living off cheap ramen and coffee. Every job interview ended the same way. Either I was too inexperienced or not the right fit. Investors didn't take me seriously. My so-called friends started avoiding me, probably worried I'd ask for money. But failure wasn't an option. I took every freelance gig I could find. Building websites, automating spreadsheets, even writing AI chatbots for small businesses. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept me afloat. I poured every cent I made into my real passion, developing my own AI platform. I wanted to create something revolutionary, an AI assistant that wasn't just another chatbot, but one that could truly understand and learn from human conversations. It could help people practice languages, provide emotional support, and even act as a personal mentor. But I needed funding. That's when I heard about a startup pitch competition. The grand prize? A $100,000 investment. I had 1 month to perfect my prototype. I barely slept. Every line of code, every algorithm, every UI element, I built it all from scratch. I rehearsed my pitch 100 times, standing in front of a mirror, imagining the skeptical stares of the judges. When the day came, I walked into that conference room with nothing but my laptop, my idea, and the fire in my gut. I was the underdog, the dropout, the one nobody believed in. But by the time I finished my pitch, the entire room was silent. Then, one of the investors leaned forward and said, "I want in." When the investor said, "I want in," I almost thought I imagined it. For months, I had been hearing nothing but rejection. Doors slammed in my face, emails ignored, people laughing at my ambition. But now, someone finally saw what I saw. The investor's name was David Langston, a venture capitalist known for spotting rising tech stars before anyone else. He didn't just offer me the $100,000 prize. I walked out of that competition with a $500,000 investment deal and a team of advisors ready to turn my prototype into a real company. That night, I sat alone in my tiny apartment staring at the contract. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer realization that this was it. I was about to change everything. The next year was the hardest I had ever worked in my life. I hired a small but talented team, developers, engineers, and marketing experts who believed in my vision. We worked out of a cramped co-working space, pulling all-nighters, fixing bugs, and refining the AI until it wasn't just good. It was groundbreaking. We named it NeuroSpeak, an AI-driven language learning and personal assistant platform. Unlike other chatbots, NeuroSpeak didn't just memorize pre-written responses. It learned from conversations, adapted to users' emotions, and became more intelligent the more people interacted with it. The beta launch was terrifying. If it failed, I was done. But within 3 months, we had over 100,000 users. Tech bloggers called it the future of AI-driven education. Investors started calling. Companies wanted to license our technology. And then, one morning, I woke up to a notification. NeuroSpeak featured on Forbes, the AI startup that's disrupting the industry. I stared at my phone. Forbes. The same magazine my father used to read at the breakfast table. The same one he would point to while lecturing me about real success. And now, my name was in it. I wasn't just proving them wrong. I was leaving them behind. Success hit fast and hard. Within a year, NeuroSpeak had over 1 million active users. Investors flooded in, fighting to throw money at us. We expanded our AI's capabilities beyond language learning, introducing emotional intelligence, real-time coaching, and even therapy-like interactions. Then came the buyout offers. Google, Amazon, Microsoft. Multi-million-dollar deals sat in my inbox. It was surreal. Just 2 years ago, I was sleeping in my car, wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Now, I had more wealth and influence than my entire family combined. That's when I got the message. A simple email from my mother. Your father isn't doing well. He wants to see you. I stared at the screen, my emotions tangled. For 2 years, they hadn't reached out. No calls, no texts, nothing. And now, suddenly, they wanted me back? I wasn't sure if it was guilt, regret, or just curiosity, but I agreed. I drove up to the same house where they had disowned me that night. Nothing had changed. The manicured lawn, the expensive cars in the driveway. But something felt smaller. My father was in his study, looking frailer than I remembered. His once commanding presence had dimmed. He gestured for me to sit. Your mother tells me you've done well, he said, his voice weaker than I expected. I nodded, waiting for him to continue. I was wrong about you. He sighed. I thought success could only come in one way. Our way. But you proved me wrong. I should have felt victorious. This was what I had wanted, right? To hear him admit it? But instead, I just felt tired. I didn't do this to prove anything to you, I said, my voice steady. I did it because I believed in myself when no one else did. Silence stretched between us. Then, for the first time in my life, my father looked at me. Not as a disappointment, but as an equal. But the truth was, I didn't need his validation anymore. I had already won. After years of resentment, after all the pain of being cast aside, I finally had what I thought I wanted. My father's recognition. But as I sat across from him, I realized something surprising. It didn't matter anymore. I had spent so long chasing success, trying to prove them wrong, that I never stopped to think about what I actually wanted. And sitting there, in the house that once felt like a prison, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't the same person they had abandoned. I stood up. I appreciate you saying that, Dad. I really do. He nodded, looking like he wanted to say more, but I didn't wait for it. I left the house that night with no anger, no bitterness, just a sense of peace. I had built my own future. I didn't need to look back anymore. The billion-dollar move. A few months later, NeuroSpeak hit 10 million users worldwide. Schools, corporations, even therapists were integrating it into their systems. The AI wasn't just a tool anymore. It was changing lives. Then came the biggest moment of all. A $1.2 billion acquisition offer. I had done it. My company, my dream, had become something worth over $1 billion. It was more money than my entire family had ever made, combined. But I wasn't ready to sell. Instead, I expanded. Neurospeak became a global powerhouse, reshaping the AI landscape. I invested in other startups, mentored young entrepreneurs, and built a foundation to support underprivileged kids in tech education. One day, as I was preparing for a keynote speech in Silicon Valley, I got another message from my family. This time, it wasn't from my father. It was from my younger brother. "I want to learn from you." The same brother who once laughed at my dreams now wanted to join me. And that's when I knew. I hadn't just won. I had changed the game. I smiled, closed the message, and walked onto the stage. I wasn't living for their approval anymore. I was living for me. Years ago, I walked out of my family's house with nothing but a laptop and a dream. Now, I stood on the main stage of Tech Vision 2030, the most prestigious tech conference in the world. The room was packed. Thousands of entrepreneurs, investors, and industry leaders waiting for me to speak. Cameras flashed, news outlets streamed my talk live, and somewhere out there, the same family that once cast me aside was watching. I took a deep breath and started. "My name is Ethan Carter, and I was told I would never make it, that I was throwing my life away by chasing something different, that I was a failure. But here's the truth." I paused, scanning the crowd. I didn't fail. I built something that changed the world. The audience erupted in applause, but I wasn't done. I don't stand here today because I was gifted or lucky. I'm here because I refuse to let other people define my future. If you have a vision, if you believe in something, fight for it, even when no one else believes. That moment wasn't just a speech. It was a statement. I had spent years chasing success, proving myself to the world and to the people who doubted me. But now, I wasn't just successful. I was free. After the event, I finally replied to my younger brother. "Come to my office next week. Let's talk." Maybe I didn't need my family anymore, but that didn't mean I had to shut the door forever. They had written me off once, but I had the power to choose what happened next. Not out of desperation, not out of revenge, but because now I was in control. As I left the conference, stepping into a world I had built with my own hands, I knew one thing for sure. When my younger brother Ryan walked into my office, he looked different. Not in the physical sense. He still had the same sharp eyes and the confident stride that our father drilled into us as kids. But there was something else. I gestured for him to sit across from me. "Didn't expect to hear from you," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Last time we talked, you were calling me an idiot for leaving med school behind." Ryan sighed. "Yeah, I was wrong about a lot of things." He looked around the massive glass-walled office, the city skyline stretching behind me. "You built all of this, and we never gave you a chance." I studied him. "Why are you here, Ryan?" He hesitated, then finally said, "I want to work with you." I let that sink in. Years ago, my family wanted nothing to do with me. Now, my own brother was asking for a place in my company. I could have laughed in his face, told him to leave, just like they did to me. But I wasn't them. "Ryan," I said slowly, "you spent years looking down on what I do. What's changed?" His expression darkened. "Dad's business is struggling. The economy hit him hard, and he refuses to adapt. He still thinks his name alone is enough to keep the company alive." I nodded. I had seen it coming. Traditional businesses were collapsing under the weight of innovation. My father had spent decades building his empire, but he had never evolved. He refused to believe that technology, my technology, was the future. Ryan continued, "I don't want to go down with him. I see what you've done, and I want to be a part of it. I want to learn." I folded my hands on my desk, staring at him. "You want a job?" "Yes." I leaned forward. "Then prove to me you deserve it." He stiffened. "What do you mean?" I smirked. "I don't do handouts, Ryan. I built this from nothing. You want in? Earn it." I could see the frustration in his eyes. He wasn't used to being tested like this. In our family, everything had always been handed to us, but not anymore. "This is your shot," I said. "Take it or leave it." Ryan clenched his jaw, then nodded. "I'll prove it to you." The family reckoning, as Ryan left my office, I knew something had shifted. For years, I was the outcast, the disappointment. But now, not the other way around. And for the first time, I realized I had already won. Ryan wanted in, but I wasn't about to make it easy. I gave him a trial project, a mid-level AI integration deal with a startup looking to use Neurospeak's technology. It wasn't a make-or-break contract for us, but it was still important. If Ryan could handle it, I'd consider bringing him on. If he failed, well, he'd learned that my world wasn't as easy as he thought. The first few weeks were brutal for him. I didn't give him special treatment. He worked under one of my toughest project managers, Liam, who had no patience for entitlement. Ryan struggled. He wasn't used to working under someone, let alone in a field he had mocked for years. He wasn't used to deadlines, client demands, or the grind that came with working in a fast-moving tech company. At one point, Liam pulled me aside and said, "Your brother's smart, but he's not used to being told no. I don't think he's cut out for this." I just nodded. Let's see if he sinks or swims. A month in, Ryan hit a wall. The startup he was working with had last-minute changes, demanding new AI features that weren't in the original deal. The team was overworked, and Ryan was on the verge of quitting. Late one night, I found him in the office staring at his screen, frustrated. "This isn't what I expected," he admitted. "I thought I don't know, come in and start winning." I smirked. "Yeah, well, success doesn't work like that." He looked at me, tired but determined. "How did you do it? How did you go from nothing to this?" I leaned against the desk. I had no choice. When you have nothing to fall back on, failure isn't an option. You've always had a safety net. That's why you're struggling now. This is the first time you're truly on your own." Ryan was silent. Then he nodded. "I need to finish this." And for the first time, I believed he might actually pull it off. A week later, he delivered. Not only did he close the deal, but he managed to negotiate better terms for both the startup and our company. His team respected him now, not because he was my brother, but because he had earned it. Liam came to me and said, "All right, I was wrong. The kid's got potential." Ryan had passed the test. After the deal was done, Ryan walked into my office. "So?" he asked. "Do I get the job?" I smirked. "Yeah, you do." He exhaled, relieved. Then he said something that caught me off guard. "You know, I get it now." "Get what?" "Why you left." He hesitated. "Why you had to do this on your own." For years, my family never understood me, never respected my choices. But now, at least one of them finally did. And that was enough. With Ryan officially on board, things were about to get even bigger. My company was still rising. And now, I wasn't just proving my family wrong. I was bringing one of them along for the ride. The past didn't matter anymore. The future was mine to build. And I was just getting started. For the first time in years, I had started to believe that maybe, just maybe, family could be repaired. That Ryan could change. That I could leave the past behind and build something greater. I was wrong. 6 months after Ryan officially joined my company, we were preparing for the biggest deal in Neurospeak's history. A $5 billion merger that would turn us into the undisputed leader in AI-driven communication. Then, the night before the deal was set to close, everything fell apart. My legal team called me in a panic. The company we were merging with had suddenly backed out, citing confidential internal concerns. I was blindsided. Nothing made sense until I dug deeper. And then I saw it, a leaked internal document. It detailed our entire strategy, our valuation tactics, and our upcoming innovations, the kind of information that could only come from someone on the inside. I stormed into Ryan's office, my heart pounding. He was sitting there, calm, almost too calm. You did this, I said, my voice ice cold. He didn't deny it. I did what I had to do, he said, standing up. You think you built this empire all on your own? You really believed you could outgrow the family and not face the consequences? It hit me like a gut punch. This wasn't about a job. It was never about learning from me. Ryan was a plant. My father had sent him. The struggling family business, the one I thought was dying, wasn't dying at all. They had been watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike. And Ryan had played me perfectly. You were so desperate to believe in me, Ryan continued, stepping closer. You wanted to think I had changed. But the truth is, Ethan, you were always the outsider. And you still are. Within days, the damage was irreversible. Investors pulled out. Stock prices plummeted. The board started questioning my leadership. And just like that, the empire I built from nothing was on the brink of collapse. And the worst part? I never saw it coming. Ryan was never my brother. He was my father's final move. But they underestimated me. They thought they had taken everything from me. They thought I would break. But I didn't crawl my way to the top just to fall now. I had built myself from nothing once. And I would do it again. Only this time, I wasn't going to play fair. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my revenge.